Housing. Housing is the most critical of all livelihood issues in Hong Kong. The current term government is not only determined to avert the supply-demand imbalance progressively, but is also confident and capable of achieving this. The long-term housing strategy released last month sets out the direction of Hong Kong's housing policy with a view to addressing housing problems with a multi-pronged approach. Public rental housing. After taking office, the current term government has been vigorously speeding up the development of public housing, and public rental housing production has seen continuous increase. It is estimated that during the 5 years from 2014-15 to 2018-19, a total of 77,100 PRH units will be completed, among which 23,300 units are scheduled to complete in 2015-16. In the LTHS, we have maintained our PRH production target of about 20,000 units each year for the next decade. To achieve this target, I have requested the relevant departments to keep coordinating priorities, making proper planning, and provide suitable community facilities so as to increase supply. However, of critical importance is the support of local communities and other people. Meanwhile, the safety risks concerning subdivided flats, especially those in industrial buildings, should not be overlooked. The Buildings Department will continue its efforts to totally ban the subdivided flats used for domestic purposes in industrial buildings. It will step up prosecution against owners who fail to comply with the relevant orders. As to the subdivided flats in domestic and composite buildings, the BD will continue to take more vigorous enforcement actions against irregularities involving building and fire safety. Should any occupants be rendered homeless as a result of these actions, the government will provide them with transitional accommodation in accordance with the current mechanism. Subsidized home ownership. High property prices decrease the public's relative ability to purchase a home and result in a marked increase in demand from low and middle-income families for home ownership flats or other subsidized flats. Greenville Villa, put up for pre-sale by the Hong Kong Housing Society at the end of 2012, and the first batch of 2,160 new HOS flats put up for pre-sale by the Housing Authority last month, received an overwhelming public response. We must therefore actively explore ways to increase the supply of sale flats through a multi-pronged approach by engaging public or non-profit making organizations, including the Housing Authority, HKHS, URA, and the Hong Kong Settlers Housing Corporation Limited. By doing so, more property choices and homeownership opportunities will be provided for low and middle-income families. The Housing Authority will put up approximately 2,700 and 2,000 HOS flats for pre-sale in 2015-16 and 2016-17 respectively. The HKHS will also offer 1,600 subsidized sale flats for pre-sale in 2016-17. Of these flats, 1,000 will be units provided in Sha Tin at the government's request made in 2013. Moreover, 2 sites in Tseung Kwan O and Tuen Mun, respectively, have been set aside for development by the HKHS, providing an estimated total of about 600 units. In addition to the Housing Authority's HOS flats and the subsidized sale flats of the HKHS, I consider that there should be different forms of subsidized sale flats to meet the needs of different people. To further improve the housing ladder, I have proposed to the Housing Authority that suitable flats should be identified among its PRH developments under construction for sale to green form applicants in the form of a pilot scheme with prices set at a level lower than those of the HOS flats. Target buyers are mainly sitting PRH tenants and PRH applicants who have passed the detailed vetting and are due for flat allocation. This scheme will help green form applicants achieve home ownership while releasing more PRH flats for allocation to families on PRH waiting lists. In addition, in light of experience gained from private sector participation scheme and mixed development pilot schemes, I consider that we can vigorously explore ways to further leverage the private sector's capacity to assist in increasing and accelerating the supply of subsidized sales flats. Private housing. On private housing, according to the latest projection in December 2014, the housing supply from first-hand private residential property market for the coming 3 to 4 years is approximately 70,000 units, which is the highest on record. The private sector only produced an average of about 11,400 flats each year over the past 5 years. Based on the preliminary assessment of private residential developments known to have started or to be started on disposed sites, the private sector will, on average, produce about 14,600 flats each year in the next 5 years, representing an increase of about 30%. The government will continue to maintain the stable and healthy development of the private property markets through steady and sustained land supply and implementation of demand management measures when necessary. Land. There is a serious mismatch between the supply of land and the needs of our society. The short supply of land and housing has led to rising property prices and rents. High property prices and rents have prevented many young people from forming a family or starting their own business. This has also resulted in cramped living space for society as a whole and insufficient space for social welfare facilities such as kindergartens, elderly homes, and residential care homes for persons with disabilities. We have an ever-long PRH waiting list, and an increasing number of people have seen their living environment deteriorate. Some have no alternative but to live in subdivided units, industrial buildings. Small and medium-sized enterprises face great operation difficulties, while overseas investors are disheartened by the difficulty in establishing a business space in Hong Kong. The root of many social and economic problems in Hong Kong lies in the shortage of land for development. What Hong Kong lacks is not land, but land that is developable. The difference lies in the need for land planning and development. The process of land planning and development takes time. Hong Kong experienced a long period of economic downturn and saw a declining property market after the Asian financial crisis. The government scaled back the speed and scope of our planning and development of land and did not foresee the huge demand for developable land as a result of the eventual economic recovery. A substantial amount of land was sold for non-development uses such as country parks to improve environment. We also lowered the development density of land newly planned for development. These are the causes for serious shortage of housing supply that we have been facing in recent years. The consultation process for land planning and development has become drawn out, with increasing controversies and uncertainties, including the uncertainties and time loss brought about by judicial reviews. We have to take into consideration more and more factors such as the impact on traffic, environment, conservation, and even air ventilation in the planning process. As a result, the supply of developable land has decreased or decelerated. Society as a whole must make hard choices. Planning must reflect the overall interests of Hong Kong and heed the priorities of society's needs. We should not only consider the well-being of individual areas in planning and development, but also the overall housing supply and demand of Hong Kong as a whole. We cannot have our cake and eat it. If we opt for a lower development intensity, traffic flow will be smoother and the living environment will be nicer. However, the overall housing supply will be lower, which will lengthen the waiting time for PRH and push up property prices and rents. Town planning and land supply should not cater only for the people who can afford expensive properties, but also for those facing difficulties finding a home due to inadequate supply. At present, the most pressing concern is to ensure adequate and speedy land supply for development. Increasing and expediting land supply is a fundamental solution to resolve the land and housing problems of Hong Kong.